This woman was once the most feared royal concubine during the Joseon dynasty. Whenever her name was mentioned, people immediately remembered the woman who shook the palace and threw the entire royal court into chaos. She was willing to trample anyone just to reach the peak of power. But the world hates the rich, looks down on the poor, and always tries to destroy those who are intelligent. One day, after failing to fulfill her duty, she was punished and forced to drink poison. She believed it was the end of her life. But what she never expected was to awaken in the modern era and encounter a man who perfectly matched her taste. 3 years before her death, Joseon was struck by a series of disasters. A comet hung in the sky for 2 straight months. A severe drought spread across the land. Epidemics broke out, and the people suffered greatly. Amid the chaos, all the blame was placed on Kang Danshim. Under immense pressure from a court, the king issued an order to punish Kang Danshim in hopes of calming the kingdom's fate. She was accused of causing disorder in the palace and attempting to kill the crown prince. Every accusation carried the punishment of death. Yet when the royal decree arrived, Kang Danshim remained calm. She quietly finished painting a red plum blossom before slowly standing to accept her punishment. Outside, shamans performed rituals while a bowl of poison was brought before her inside the palace. Because of her fearless personality, she refused to be intimidated. She threw away the bowl and demanded to see the king before dying. When she still refused to drink the poison, the servants forcibly poured it down her throat. As she took her final breath, the long-awaited rain finally poured over the kingdom. The people mocked her, saying even the heavens refused to forgive her. But at the same moment, strange events occurred. Winter suddenly arrived in the middle of summer, and dark clouds swallowed the sun. Filled with rage and resentment, Kang Danshim died. But moments later, she heard a mysterious voice. When she opened her eyes again, she was shocked to realize she was still alive. She was even more stunned by her surroundings. Everything looked strange. People wore unfamiliar clothes, men had short hair, and women boldly showed their long legs in public. That was when she realized she had traveled 300 years into the future. In this new era, she found herself in the body of an unknown actress working as a stunt double for a famous celebrity. Still confused and unaware that she was now in modern times, filming for a new scene suddenly began. Thinking she was about to be executed again, she immediately fought back like a warrior. The staff assumed she was just overacting to steal the spotlight, so no one stopped her. As a result, she single-handedly defeated the stunt actors and knocked them to the floor with her punches. The people around her thought she might be on drugs and tried to restrain her, but she was far too strong for anyone to control. At the same time, society was also shaken by the scandal surrounding Charlie, heir to the Chael Group. The media exposed him as the worst successor in the country's history. Public outrage exploded, and people demanded he be removed from his position. He was labeled abusive and power-hungry, with people even throwing eggs at him. Because of his ruthless reputation in mergers and acquisitions, he was nicknamed a vampire and a greedy businessman. That day, Charlie met with the president of a cosmetics company regarding a contract. The company had previously bribed officials to obtain pharmaceutical certification and inflate product prices for massive profits. These kinds of companies were Charlie's favorite targets. The company president strongly resisted, but Charlie was fully prepared. He manipulated the man psychologically, making it seem as though he was simply giving him a chance. He even warned that he could destroy the company at any moment. Then, he delivered an ultimatum. For every minute the president delayed his decision, the company would lose 1 billion won in value. In just 3 minutes, 3 billion won disappeared. Terrified, the president immediately signed the contract. After successfully taking over the company, Charlie was clearly pleased. Outside, his loyal assistant Sun Jae-chan was already waiting. Knowing he would probably be overworked again, he secretly wished for a storm the next day so he could rest for even one day. But it was only a dream. When his boss gave orders, he had no choice but to obey. Meanwhile, after causing chaos on set, Kang Danshim finally noticed something was wrong. Not a single person obeyed her commands. While she stood there confused, several pretty women approached her asking for pictures. When she saw the cell phone being used for selfies, she was amazed. She never imagined such a magical mirror could exist in the world. But more than anything, what worried her most was her appearance. She immediately searched for a mirror to properly see her face. The moment she saw her pale and neglected appearance, she nearly broke down. Elsewhere, Charlie watched a fake scandal video about himself and was deeply impressed. He never expected technology to become so advanced that even he almost believed the video was real. He even considered buying the company that created it. As Kang Danshim panicked over her appearance, she remembered the shaman Jiam Bosao, whom she had visited before her execution. Back then, the shaman had taken a drop of her blood and told her she would first have to pass through death before living again. When she noticed the wound on her hand had completely healed, she finally began to believe those words. As she tried to calm herself, one of her co-stars, Neon, suddenly arrived and harshly scolded her. The management agency was furious because she had destroyed the entire set. Before the shouting even ended, Hong Bu-seon also arrived together with the actress Ji-hyo, both wearing expressions that clearly hinted at bad intentions. At first glance, Kang Dan-shim immediately saw through Hong Bu-seon's personality. She could tell he was the type who loved belittling and dominating others. From his furious tone, she quickly understood that he was forcing her to sign a termination contract. But instead of feeling intimidated, Kang Dan-shim fearlessly argued back until Hong Bu-seon was left speechless. Afterward, she watched Yoon Ji-hyo pretend to be innocent while calming Hong Bu-seon down. Because of that, Kang Dan-shim instantly judged Ji-hyo as a lowly woman with no remarkable charm at all. One of their co-workers who witnessed the intense argument was practically entertained by the entire scene. As they continued talking, Neon suddenly slipped a hand inside the costume and pulled out a cell phone to answer a call. The moment Kang Dan-shim saw the strange metal box playing music, she froze once again in shock. Still unable to think clearly, she then spotted a group of fierce-looking men approaching her. Thinking they were rebels planning an attack, she immediately ran out of the building. But the moment she stepped outside, an entirely new world unfolded before her eyes. Towering buildings that seemed to pierce the clouds and metal carriages faster than horses surrounded her. Everything felt strange and unbelievable, leaving her even more confused and terrified. Meanwhile, Charlie was busy watching the fake scandal video about himself. He was impressed by how advanced the technology had become because even he almost believed the video was real. But after reading the netizens' comments calling him the shame of the country, he looked like a bullied child helplessly reporting comments just to vent his frustration. On the other hand, Kang Dan-shim wandered through the streets in a daze from pure panic. Without noticing, she accidentally collided with Charlie's car. Sun Jae-chan quickly stepped out to call an ambulance, but Kang Dan-shim suddenly screamed, believing she had truly fallen into hell. Terrified, she ran straight into heavy traffic. At that exact moment, a speeding car approached. Kang Dan-shim froze in fear, waiting for the worst, but Charlie quickly pulled her into his arms and saved her. Right after rescuing her, Charlie's attitude instantly turned cold as he asked what kind of scam she was trying to pull for money. Offended by his arrogance, Kang Dan-shim slapped him without hesitation and scolded him for having no respect for women. Charlie concluded that the woman was mentally unstable and assumed she was pretending to extort money from him. He casually took cash from his wallet and threw it at her. Humiliated beyond belief, Kang Dan-shim grabbed a wooden stick from the roadside and chased Charlie down the street while beating him with it. The dramatic scene quickly drew a crowd of spectators. Too embarrassed to fight back, Charlie simply left his business card behind and told her to send the hospital bill to his company before escaping as quickly as possible. Kang Dan-shim picked up the card and examined it carefully, wondering what kind of object it was and why someone's name was written on it. When Charlie returned to the company, he still could not get over the humiliation of being slapped by a woman in public. Because of that, Sun Jae-chan mentioned that he had visited a fortune teller for him. According to the fortune teller, Charlie would suffer terrible luck this year and should stay away from women. Already irritated, Charlie was suddenly confronted by an angry man accusing their company of exploiting subcontractors. While they were talking, an employee informed them that President Beto had arrived. Charlie immediately left to meet his business partner. Meanwhile, after slapping the CEO, Kang Dan-shim wandered aimlessly through the streets. When she overheard a tour guide mentioning the word Joseon, she unknowingly followed the group. At the museum, the guide showed a plum blossom painting from ancient times and explained that it had been painted by a queen. But Kang Dan-shim froze because she clearly remembered painting it herself. When she asked about the queen of that era, the guide explained that history remembered her as an evil woman who brought chaos to the kingdom and died after being forced to drink poison. She did not even have an official name anymore and was only remembered as a disgrace in history. Kang Dan-shim was overwhelmed with sorrow. After hundreds of years, she realized she had left nothing behind except hatred and slander. As she walked around lost in thought, a female student approached her. The girl happened to love researching Kang Dan-shim's life and wanted to talk with her. According to the student, Kang Dan-shim's reputation only worsened after her death. Old records claimed that despite her low birth, she climbed to one of the highest positions in the palace. Because of her power, she supposedly became cruel toward the other royal concubines, causing many people to hate her. Whenever disasters or droughts occurred, people immediately blamed Kang Dan-shim. Whenever men became obsessed with women or gambling, their wives also used her as an excuse. Little by little, she became a symbol of evil and a woman who destroyed the nation. Even in modern times, Kang Dan-shim's name survived as a legendary villain mocked by everyone. 20 years of her youth had vanished like smoke and become nothing more than an old story from 300 years ago. Looking back on everything, all she felt was bitterness. At that moment, rain suddenly began to pour. As the cold droplets touched her skin, she slowly came back to her senses. She realized this was not hell. She was truly alive. It felt as though the rain had washed away her past and given her hope for a new life. She told herself that rather than returning to the past and reliving her tragic fate, it would be better to live luxuriously and happily in this new era. But to survive in this strange world, she first needed someone powerful to rely on. Suddenly, Kang Danshim remembered the business card Charlie had given her earlier. After asking strangers for directions, she immediately headed to his company. As a woman who had spent years surviving inside the palace, she only needed one glance to know that Charlie was a man overflowing with wealth and power. Because of that, she instantly decided that from now on, Charlie would become both her weapon and her shield in this new era. Meanwhile, Charlie's grandfather and chairman of the Chael Group heard about the commotion involving the employee and immediately came to scold him. Charlie tried explaining that the scandal video was fake, but the old man refused to believe him because it looked far too real. But that was not the chairman's real problem. What irritated him more was Charlie's habit of treating blind dates like business negotiations. To Charlie, marriage was nothing more than a merger between two companies. Whenever he met a woman, he brought investment proposals as gifts. Whether the relationship progressed depended entirely on how much profit the woman could offer him. Meanwhile, Kang Danshim followed the address on the business card and arrived at Charlie's company. But when the receptionist saw her appearance, she mistakenly assumed Kang Danshim was an actress attending an audition. Charlie's company happened to be holding a model search for a new cosmetic line, so actresses crowded the building. Kang Danshim sat quietly in a corner to wait, but unexpectedly came face to face with Yoon Ji-hyo again. She watched Ji-hyo pretend to act modest in front of the judges while claiming her dream was to become a good wife and daughter-in-law. Kang Danshim could only smirk mockingly, thinking how boring a woman must be if her only dream was staying trapped in a kitchen. While silently ridiculing Ji-hyo, Charlie arrived as one of the audition judges. After the casting ended, Kang Danshim followed Charlie to discuss the arrangement she wanted. But Charlie remained convinced she was just another gold digger and even advised her to find a proper job instead. As they argued, the sky suddenly darkened. Kang Danshim sensed an overwhelming evil energy directed straight at Charlie. The very moment a solar eclipse covered the sun, she immediately pulled him away. At the same instant, a mannequin fell from the rooftop above them. When the darkness disappeared, Charlie realized he was tightly embracing Kang Danshim to protect her. Back in the Joseon era, Kang Danshim had not only been intelligent and capable, but also deeply loved by the king. Even though power rested in her hands, she never became arrogant, which only made the king fall for her even more. But one day, the king sent her a gift. She assumed it was a reward, but upon opening it, she found a bowl of poison inside. Terrified, she immediately knelt and begged the king to withdraw the order. But when she lifted her head, the king had already disappeared. That was when she realized it had only been a nightmare. When she opened her eyes, she found Charlie sitting beside her. She had thought he was heartless, but he had actually brought her to his office to talk. Charlie remembered that Kang Danshim had saved his life earlier, but he still suspected she had ulterior motives. When he asked how she sensed the danger, she calmly claimed that she possessed an extremely powerful sixth sense. In truth, back in Joseon, she had survived multiple assassination and poisoning attempts thanks to that strange instinct. To secure a place in the modern world, Kang Danshim decided to tell Charlie the truth. She would use her mysterious ability to protect him from danger in exchange for staying by his side. But Charlie dismissed everything as nonsense and coldly threw her out. Despite his harsh words, however, his heart was softer than it appeared. Secretly, he ordered Sun Jae-chan to drive Kang Danshim home. While riding inside the metal carriage faster than any horse, Kang Danshim curiously asked about Charlie's true intentions. Sun Jae-chan explained that his boss was simply worried she might get hurt. Hearing that made Kang Danshim feel warmth in her heart. In this vast and unfamiliar world, there was still someone who genuinely cared about her. But because she was not used to riding in cars, she became dizzy even though the vehicle moved slower than an electric scooter. Meanwhile, Charlie secretly investigated the earlier accident. He remembered the employees protesting unpaid wages and began suspecting that someone had manipulated them because all salaries had already been paid before the attack happened. At the same time, Charlie's family gathered to celebrate his grandfather's birthday. From daughters-in-law to grandchildren, everyone desperately tried to impress the chairman. Some gifted expensive delicacies, while others presented thousand-year-old ginseng, said to grant long life. But for the chairman, he could buy all those things whenever he wanted. What truly mattered to him was the love of his grandson Munzo. 17 years earlier, the chairman had suffered a severe illness and needed a liver transplant. Despite having many children and grandchildren, nobody volunteered to donate except Munzo, who had only recently completed military service at the time. Because of that, Munzo became the chairman's favorite heir to the family fortune. Meanwhile, when Kang Danshim finally arrived at her destination, she was horrified to discover that her new home was nothing more than an old, run-down building. That was when she realized it was a cheap apartment complex meant for ordinary people. In front of the gate, Kang Danshim still carried herself with the elegance of a noble woman. She stood there for quite a while, expecting servants to come out, carry her belongings, and attend to her like a lady of high status. But instead, the only person who appeared was the landlord rushing toward her. The moment the landlord saw her, he immediately scolded Kang Danshim for coming home so late and making her grandmother wait for so long. Curious, Kang Danshim entered the house to finally meet the grandmother she had never seen before. The old woman had prepared an entire table full of food for her beloved granddaughter. Just by looking at the grandmother's rough and calloused hands, Kang Danshim instantly understood that this was a woman who had spent her whole life struggling and working hard. Not wanting to hurt her feelings, she forced herself to finish the overly salty food that nearly burned her throat. Meanwhile, at the chairman's birthday party, Charlie arrived late. He already knew the banquet was nothing more than a performance staged by his relatives to gain favor with the old man because of his wealth. That was why he deliberately arrived calmly and only at the perfect time. At that exact moment, Sun Jae-chan approached him to report that the man who caused the disturbance and threw the mannequin had escaped quickly using his accomplice's car. Meanwhile, before Kang Danshim's grandmother left, she secretly handed her some money for expenses. Because her granddaughter had lost her parents at a young age, the old woman advised her that if life became too difficult, she should find a good husband to change her fate. In her grandmother's eyes, her granddaughter was the most beautiful and kindest woman in the world. As Kang Danshim listened to the old woman's sincere advice while watching her frail figure slowly walk away, she felt warmth from this strange new world for the very first time. After her grandmother left, Kang Danshim returned to her tiny room. It was called a room, but it was unbelievably small. The moment she opened the window, all she could see was a cracked wall, and she could clearly hear every sound coming from a neighboring room. Annoyed, she repeatedly punched the wall as a warning to her noisy neighbor. Almost immediately, the neighbor, Baek Gwangnam, loudly banged on her door. Baek Gwangnam scolded her for being the one making noise, but Kang Danshim refused to back down. She sarcastically replied that if even that was considered noisy, perhaps breathing inside the room should also be forbidden. When the other tenants began agreeing with her, she boldly drove Baek Gwangnam away and finally restored peace to her tiny room. Meanwhile, Charlie could not stop thinking about the moment Kang Danshim saved him. He kept wondering what kind of woman she truly was. When he remembered her offer to stay by his side, he slowly began having second thoughts. Back in her room, Kang Danshim noticed a small but beautiful lamp on the table. With a gentle pull of its string, the entire room suddenly lit up as if by magic. As she stared at the glowing light, memories of Joseon slowly resurfaced in her mind. Back then, she had been fortunate enough to enter the palace as a low-ranking court lady, but fate had been cruel to her. The other court ladies treated her like a punching bag and bullied her relentlessly. Refusing to be oppressed, Kang Danshim fought back by throwing dirty water onto the cruel women. As punishment, they locked her inside a dark wooden box. Remembering the unbearable loneliness she felt trapped inside, that box made her chest tighten painfully. Thankfully, she no longer had to cling to a dying candle while waiting desperately for sunrise. While exploring the room, Kang Danshim accidentally discovered a diary. As she read each page, she gradually learned about the bitter life of the body's original owner. The girl had once been a promising child star, but her fame quickly faded away. As she grew older, she became nothing more than an unknown actress endlessly waiting for a leading role that never came. Through all her quiet struggles, the only source of strength she had was her beloved grandmother, who believed in her unconditionally. After closing the notebook and looking at the notes covering the walls, Kang Danshim's heart filled with mixed emotions. In her previous life, she had started as a bullied court lady before becoming the king's favorite royal concubine admired by everyone, only for everything to end in tragedy through poison. Her life had been nothing more than a rapid rise followed by a devastating fall. But now that she had been reborn, carrying a heart once poisoned by betrayal, Kang Danshim became determined to destroy the old rules that imprisoned women. To live brilliantly, Kang Danshim began transforming herself. She discarded her old clothes, wore modern outfits, and expanded her knowledge. She read newspapers to learn current events and watched videos on her cell phone to understand the flow of history. She learned to rely on herself instead of depending on others. Her ability to adapt was astonishingly fast. Whenever anyone secretly tried taking pictures of her, she would immediately smack them with a laundry stick without missing. And when Baek Gwangnam attempted to steal food for free, she caught him red-handed. Because of her strict discipline around the apartment complex, she unexpectedly became an idol among the tenants and even earned applause from them. Ever since meeting this strange woman, Charlie had begun dreaming about ancient times, where he constantly saw a woman whose face he could never clearly recognize. Because of this, he visited his close friend, a psychologist, for therapy. His friend told him that he simply lacked romance in his life and should finally search for his destined love. But to Charlie, love was no different from poison. Meanwhile, after waiting a long time for Charlie's answer, Kang Dan-shim visited his company again to repeat her proposal. But Charlie remained arrogant and cold. He stepped close to Kang Dan-shim and proudly declared that he was a monster born from capitalism, so she should never expect to get even a single cent from him. But Kang Dan-shim was not someone who could easily be intimidated. Without hesitation, she delivered a powerful kick that left Charlie twisting in pain. Furious, he ordered his men to throw her out of the company and secretly investigate her background. When Sun Jae-chan handed over the investigation results, Charlie could only shake his head because Kang Dan-shim's background was surprisingly ordinary. The only unusual thing was that she had once been a child actress nicknamed the nation's Little Rock. After reading the nickname, Charlie muttered that she looked more like a rock than an actual person. To avoid being bothered again, he ordered the company's security to tighten up and immediately throw Kang Dan-shim out if she ever appeared again. Disappointed that Charlie still refused to believe her, Kang Dan-shim visited Jeom Jong-ae to vent about the unbelievably stingy CEO. Since she was almost out of money, she boldly asked the shaman to lend her 50 million won. Jeom Jong-ae burst out laughing after hearing the amount, saying that even if she sold the entire shop, it still would not be enough. In the end, feeling sorry for her, she only lent Kang Dan-shim 100,000 won for expenses. Meanwhile, even before that, Munzo had already visited Charlie's friend and brought a plant as a gift. But in truth, he had hidden a listening device inside the flower pot and secretly listened to Charlie's entire conversation with his friend Dong Wai. The moment he heard them talking about a woman, he became suspicious. At the same time, Kang Dan-shim suddenly became famous because of a viral clip showing her screaming while performing stunts on set. The video spread rapidly across social media platforms, and she quickly became the talk of netizens. When Charlie's employees saw the massive impact of the viral video, they immediately suggested signing Kang Dan-shim as the face of the company's new advertising campaign. But Charlie quickly rejected the idea because, for him, crossing paths once with that crazy woman was already more than enough. Meanwhile, the moment Kang Dan-shim received the money borrowed from Jeom Jong-ae, she immediately bought a corn pancake from a street vendor. After taking just one bite, she felt as though her soul had ascended from how delicious it was. From then on, she became completely addicted to mukbang culture and returned to the market almost every day just to eat. But while her appetite kept growing, the money in her wallet disappeared just as quickly. Because of that, she started searching for a part-time job. At every interview, recruiters could only scratch their heads at her bizarre self-introduction. She proudly claimed she could capture assassins and punish fraudsters. Because of that, everyone assumed she had mental problems, and not a single company hired her. While angrily stepping on job opening flyers, Kang Dan-shim ran into Baek Gwangnam, who was also job hunting. Because of that, he brought her along to his workplace. There, she discovered she had actually been invited as a guest for a mukbang livestream. To Kang Dan-shim, it was the perfect job because the food was free and she would even get paid. Because of her incredibly entertaining way of eating, the livestream's viewers multiplied rapidly like kites carried away by the wind. From then on, she officially entered the world of livestream selling. She used every survival skill she had learned from ancient times to dominate online sales. From kitchen knives and rare books to energy drinks, every product she touched sold out instantly. Before long, Kang Dan-shim successfully debuted as the mukbang goddess, a terrifying sales monster admired by everyone. After seeing how wildly popular Kang Dan-shim had become, Charlie immediately changed his mind and ordered Sun Jae-chan to secure an exclusive contract with her before another company could steal her away. At the same time, the production team also took advantage of Kang Dan-shim's popularity and offered her 7 times the usual pay to livestream a health drink advertisement. But the moment she looked at the bowl of the drink, Kang Dan-shim suddenly froze. Memories of the poison she had been forced to drink in her previous life came flooding back, along with the unbearable pain she once suffered. Overwhelmed with fear, she became nauseous and ran out of the studio. As the staff angrily scolded her for ruining the shoot and even tried to hurt her, Charlie suddenly appeared. He shoved away the man threatening Kang Dan-shim and ordered her to come with him. Kang Dan-shim was still confused about why the irritating CEO had suddenly become kind when Munzo unexpectedly appeared. The moment she saw his face, she froze in terror because he looked exactly like the king who had once forced her to drink poison during the Joseon era. Thinking she was hallucinating, Kang Danshim immediately ran toward the rooftop. Charlie chased after her, intending to scold her reckless behavior. But the moment Kang Danshim saw Munzo again, fear completely consumed her. Without thinking, she grabbed Charlie's hand and hid inside his arms while desperately begging for help. Charlie could only stand there in shock at her sudden actions. There are memories that slowly fade with time, but Kang Danshim could never forget the day she was locked inside that dark wooden box long ago. While she was losing hope inside the suffocating darkness, one man approached and reached out his hand to save her. And that man was none other than Charlie. In the past, while Kang Danshim was repairing the palace roof, two assassins secretly infiltrated the palace to kill Charlie. However, he immediately discovered them and mercilessly killed one of them. After that, he ordered his subordinates to search for the remaining assassin. Unfortunately, he came across Kang Danshim working on the roof and mistook her for the assassin. He immediately aimed his arrow at her and struck Kang Danshim, causing her to fall painfully. He quickly approached and asked who she was. Out of fear, Kang Danshim immediately begged for forgiveness. But when she saw Charlie's face, she suddenly realized that he was also the man who had once saved her. While she was thanking him, the assassin attacked again and fired an arrow. Without hesitation, Charlie shielded Kang Danshim before chasing after the culprit. Back in the present, when Kang Danshim saw the face of the king from her memories once again, she immediately buried herself in Charlie's arms and hugged him tightly to escape her fear. Even though Charlie repeatedly tried to push her away, when he saw Kang Danshim's trembling and pitiful eyes, his heart gradually softened and he eventually gave in. Charlie's older brother witnessed the scene and immediately assumed that Kang Danshim was his girlfriend. Because of that, Charlie visibly became uncomfortable and quickly denied everything. After Munzo left, Kang Danshim finally let go of Charlie. She even praised him, saying that at first glance he only looked like a beautiful decoration, but when she was in danger, he turned out to be surprisingly useful. Out of extreme irritation, Charlie almost exploded. He grabbed Kang Danshim by the collar and furiously said that because of what she did, he would lose his dignity if Munzo used that incident against him and made him look like a pervert. But instead of apologizing, Kang Danshim even said that he looked more like a pervert because he had once hugged her in the middle of the street before. While they were busy arguing, the livestream staff suddenly arrived and looked for Kang Danshim to hold her accountable for the chaos during the live broadcast. To avoid trouble, she used her favorite method once again and pretended to faint in Charlie's arms. Even though he still had not recovered from the shock because he was already starting to fall for her, Charlie simply went along with the drama and immediately carried Kang Danshim downstairs. He thought he could escape while Kang Danshim was still unconscious, but he was wrong. As if by a miracle, she immediately regained consciousness and started asking about the man they saw on the rooftop. Charlie said that he and Munzo had no relationship and that they were practically strangers to each other. But despite that, Kang Danshim shamelessly got into his car even though he repeatedly told her to get out. Charlie originally planned to force her out, but when he heard the whispers of the people around them, he had no choice but to drive her home. The only problem was that Kang Danshim was not used to modern vehicles, so after only a few minutes, she became dizzy. To prevent her from vomiting inside his expensive car, Charlie was forced to stop at a convenience store while refueling. He originally intended to get medicine for Kang Danshim's stomach, but he suddenly stopped himself and told himself that he must be going crazy because he was worrying too much about that woman. While waiting for Charlie, Kang Danshim played around with various buttons inside the vehicle. When he took too long to return, she got out of the car to look for him. While waiting, Kang Danshim looked at the screen inside the convenience store and saw a video introduction about Charlie's cousin. She froze in place because she could not believe that in the modern world, there was a man who looked exactly like the king from her past down to the smallest detail. Because of this, she started suspecting that Munzo might also be someone who had traveled through time. But when Charlie's family picture appeared on the screen, she finally realized that the two men were cousins. Because of the overwhelming shock, she thought that relationship was terribly wrong. So she decided to distance herself immediately from that dangerous connection. At that exact moment, a gas station employee mistook them for a couple and handed Kang Danshim the credit card Charlie had left behind. Without hesitation, Kang Danshim took the card and quickly disappeared. A few moments later, Charlie came out of the convenience store holding digestive medicine. But when he reached the vehicle, he realized that not only was Kang Danshim gone, but his credit card was missing as well. While he was nearly exploding with anger, he received even worse news from Sun Jae-chan. Munzo had secretly been playing with his business. The investment fund he thought would save the company was actually a trap controlled by his own cousin. When Munzo learned that Charlie had called for an emergency board meeting, he became even more pleased along with his camp. But it did not stop there. Munzo also investigated Kang Danshim's identity. When he learned that she was just an unknown stunt actress, he became even more interested in the type of woman his cousin had fallen for. Meanwhile, Kang Dan-shim struggled to make it back to their apartment complex. When she saw Baek Gwangnam waiting outside, she immediately asked for her share of the money they earned from the livestream. But because Baek Gwangnam blamed her for ruining the livestream, he planned to keep all the money for himself. Unfortunately for him, Kang Dan-shim was not the type to be oppressed. She immediately snatched the envelope and divided the money however she wanted. On the other hand, Charlie directly exposed during the board meeting that Munzo was the person funding the company's black fund. He wanted to know the value of the shares Munzo held. Sun Jae-chan explained that the current value was 50 million won per share. But if the price dropped further, Munzo could change the conditions and demand the money back. Filled with anger, Charlie personally went to confront Munzo. However, Munzo remained calm and pretended to be innocent. He even said that he only wanted to secretly help his cousin. But Charlie already knew his true personality very well. Since childhood, Munzo had always pretended to be the perfect heir in front of the chairman. But behind the scenes, he was used to stepping on others in order to rise. When Charlie was only 7 years old, he already felt suffocated by life in the Chaebol family. Back then, his grandfather introduced Munzo as his older brother. Charlie thought Munzo would become his friend, so he even shared his favorite snacks with him. But from the very beginning, Munzo looked at him with anger and contempt. When they heard the chairman arriving, Munzo deliberately broke a plate and stepped on himself to make himself look like the victim. Because of his pitiful appearance, the chairman immediately believed him, while Charlie was blamed for everything. From that moment on, Charlie fully understood how cruel the world of their family was. When he arrived home, Sun Jae-chan saw the digestive medicine and assumed his boss was not feeling well. Because he did not want to reveal the truth, Charlie simply claimed that the medicine was for him. But this only made Sun Jae-chan even more suspicious about their new vehicle, and he remembered the previous time they had given Kang Dan-shim a ride, because she had also become dizzy back then. Upon hearing that, Charlie immediately panicked and asked why he was only mentioning it now. He suddenly became worried about whether Kang Dan-shim had eaten already. But there's actually nothing to worry about, because at that moment, Kang Dan-shim was extremely happy while finishing an enormous bowl of rice. While eating, she noticed Baek Gwangnam dressing up because he was supposedly going to meet his girlfriend. But before he could even finish his coffee, he received a message saying the woman was getting married and had even invited him to the wedding. In an instant, Baek Gwangnam's world collapsed, and he could do nothing but accept the painful truth. Meanwhile, even though Kang Dan-shim had already finished the massive bowl of rice, she was still not full, so she went out again to buy her favorite corn pancakes. When the vendor saw that she was holding a credit card, she immediately suggested paying with it. Only then did Kang Dan-shim realize the incredible power of that card. Since it was not her own money being spent, she used the card without hesitation to buy many corn pancakes. On the other hand, Charlie was nearly driven insane as he kept receiving notifications about deductions from his account. While walking and eating corn pancakes, Kang Dan-shim accidentally saw Baek Gwangnam breaking up and asking his ex-girlfriend to return the gifts he had given her. Because of his intense heartbreak, Baek Gwangnam took everything out of his bag and angrily threw the bag away. It just so happened to land near Kang Dan-shim. She placed the bag over her shoulder and sighed. She realized that even in modern times, people's love was still fragile, just like in ancient times. When she returned to the apartment, she found Charlie there because he had followed her address. As always, his tongue was still sharp. Charlie directly called her a 3-no woman, no money, no education, and no brains, before immediately demanding his credit card back. Kang Dan-shim quietly returned the card, but that was when she realized that to possess such a powerful card, one needed a good reputation and a high credit score. Because of that, she proudly declared that the next day she would also get many credit cards to show him. As Charlie watched her endlessly eating corn pancakes, he could not help but ask if she was really that poor. To avoid paying her debt, Kang Dan-shim immediately pretended to be a poor woman struggling to survive and said that she was truly short on money. At that exact moment, the smell of grilled ribs drifted from a nearby restaurant, causing Kang Dan-shim to become completely mesmerized. When Charlie noticed Kang Dan-shim practically drooling over the smell of the food, he decided to treat her to a real samgyeopsal feast. Kang Dan-shim's only job was to keep eating while Charlie pretended not to care, but continuously grilled meat for her. After they ate until they could barely breathe from fullness, Kang Dan-shim suddenly remembered that she needed to distance herself from Charlie. In her mind, he and Munzo were still relatives, so it was better for her to avoid that trouble. Meanwhile, while staring at the extremely long receipt from their meal, Charlie sighed and joked that Kang Dan-shim must have devoured an entire cow. But even so, he still did not forget to ask whether her stomach was feeling better. Because of that simple question, Kang Dan-shim immediately realized that Charlie had secretly been worrying about her. After their enjoyable meal, Kang Dan-shim finally agreed to sign the advertising contract with Charlie's company. Before they parted ways, Charlie even told her to stop constantly eating junk food and said that if she was truly struggling financially, she could sell the expensive bag she was carrying so she could afford proper meals. That was when Kang Dan-shim realized that behind Charlie's cold face was a surprisingly kind and warm heart. While driving home, Charlie could not stop thinking about Kang Dan-shim over and over again. Because he was so distracted, he almost got lost on the road. Meanwhile, after Kang Dan-shim returned to the apartment, she repeatedly thought about the word romantic that Charlie had said. She even had to search its meaning on Google in order to fully understand its deeper meaning. And when she remembered that word, memories from the past suddenly returned to her mind. Back then, she was only a female soldier sent to the palace. After several years, she was transferred to become the personal court lady of a great prince. She was shocked to discover that the prince was actually the very man who had once saved her life. However, because the prince always wore a mask, she never once saw his real face. Strangely enough, the same blurry memories also appeared exactly in Charlie's dreams. Not only that, but he would wake up crying. Because he was worried about his condition, Charlie consulted a psychologist again. According to the doctor, his dreams could be messages from his subconscious, and the woman he kept seeing might be someone with a karmic connection to him from a past life. The next day, Kang Dan-shim and Baek Gwang-nam worked as food promoters at a supermarket. While offering food to customers, Kang Dan-shim looked at a historical drama being shown on a large screen. The lead actress was none other than Yoon Ji-hyo. After watching for a while, she confidently told herself that she was a better actress than her. So she suddenly started imitating and reenacting the scene in front of the people. Because of her impressive acting skills, customers immediately crowded around her and continuously praised her because she was not only beautiful, but also an excellent actress. But as the drama shifted to another scene, a little girl on the screen gave her a strange feeling. She suddenly remembered an old photo of herself together with her grandmother. That was when she realized that the child actress on television was actually herself back when she was still a child star. While staring at the inspirational notes attached to the apartment wall, she suddenly thought that perhaps the reason she was reborn into this body was to fulfill the acting dream that the real owner of the body had never achieved. Meanwhile, in order to save the company from crisis, Charlie was forced to quickly choose a new endorser for their brand. The two choices were Yoon Ji-hyo, a top actress, and Kang Dan-shim, who was currently gaining popularity because of her mukbang videos. A fierce argument erupted within the company because the executives were divided in opinion. So to make things fair, Charlie decided to conduct an anonymous vote. Everyone was shocked when more people voted for Kang Dan-shim than for Yoon Ji-hyo. Overjoyed, Charlie immediately chose Kang Dan-shim as the official model of the brand. However, Kang Dan-shim's management agency did not accept it easily. They repeatedly delayed the contract because of Yoon Ji-hyo's influence. As a famous actress, Ji-hyo could not accept that an unknown woman had stolen the opportunity from her. But Kang Dan-shim was different now. As someone given a second life, she was full of determination to face everything. So she directly went to Charlie's company to sign the contract. When Charlie saw how casually Kang Dan-shim treated the signing of the contract, he was once again reminded of how innocent she was. While the agency representative scolded Kang Dan-shim and accused her of using backdoor connections to steal the spotlight, Kang Dan-shim nearly retaliated against the woman. To show off and win everyone over, Yoon Ji-hyo shamelessly slapped Kang Dan-shim hard without hesitation. But Kang Dan-shim did not back down either. Without fear, she slapped Yoon Ji-hyo back in retaliation. As their fight became more and more heated, Charlie suddenly arrived. The moment Yoon Ji-hyo saw Charlie, her attitude immediately changed and she pretended to be pitiful and innocent. But instead of looking at her, Charlie's gaze remained fixed only on the reddening mark on Kang Dan-shim's cheek. The agency representative still had no idea how dangerous the situation was, so arrogantly asked Charlie who he was to interfere in their problem. To protect Kang Dan-shim, Charlie directly introduced himself and declared that from that day on, he would be the actress's new manager and representative. At the same time, he extended his hand to Kang Dan-shim as a promise that he would become the person she could rely on from now on. Because he wanted to protect Kang Dan-shim, Charlie did not hesitate to use his own money to buy her former agency. Not satisfied with that, he even created a new entertainment company solely for her. When he noticed that her face was still swollen, he carefully handed her bottled water so she could use it as a cold compress. But instead of using it on her cheek, Kang Dan-shim immediately drank the entire bottle. In front of her, Charlie still tried hard to maintain his cold image. He said that establishing the company was merely a simple business investment. And because Kang Dan-shim was still innocent about such matters, she immediately believed him. When she noticed how dark Charlie's office was, she suddenly pulled open the curtains so sunlight could enter. Saying he needed vitamin D, Charlie was startled and quickly stopped her. In an unexpected moment, their eyes met. Kong Danshim immediately looked away, while Charlie once again returned to his cold demeanor and kicked her out. After leaving, Kong Danshim finally looked in the mirror and saw her swollen face. Only then did she realize that the bottled water had actually been meant as a cold compress for her cheek. Because of that, her view of Charlie suddenly changed. Meanwhile, Charlie kept asking himself over and over why he had gone so far as to build an entire company for Kong Danshim. He remembered what the psychologist had said, but he still firmly denied his feelings. Arrogantly, he even declared that he would rather be buried underground than fall for that crazy woman. While talking to himself, Sun Jae-chan suddenly appeared behind him, nearly giving him a heart attack. Fortunately, the assistant had not heard anything, so Charlie sighed in relief. Meanwhile, Kong Danshim sadly sat on a bench in the park. Suddenly, a stray dog approached on its own and nestled into her lap. No matter how much she tried to shoo it away, the dog refused to leave her. When she returned to the apartment, she kept wondering why Charlie was giving her so much special treatment. Because of everything she had experienced in the past, she knew that nothing was ever given freely without expecting something in return. While extremely confused, she suddenly remembered the word fan that she had heard before. Because of that, she suddenly thought that Charlie might actually be her hardcore fan. To confirm her suspicion, she asked Beck Gwangnam whether fans were like guardian angels willing to help at any time. When he nodded, she became even more convinced of her own theory. After that, she started thinking about what she should do to thank her fan. Beck Gwangnam suggested that handwritten letters were popular gifts for fans nowadays. Since she liked the idea, she immediately decided to do it. Meanwhile, Charlie's new entertainment company for Kong Danshim was progressing smoothly. However, the biggest problem now was the lack of investment funds. Because the issue regarding the investment with President Beto was still unresolved, Charlie was forced to approach his grandfather and use his trust fund as collateral for a loan. To support his grandson, the chairman immediately agreed. As thanks, Charlie invited his grandfather to eat out, but the chairman refused and instead went straight to his favorite restaurant. Unfortunately, the restaurant was extremely crowded and there were no vacant tables left. Because of that, the chairman was forced to share a table with someone else. And fate once again brought Kong Danshim and the chairman together. The old man approached and asked whether he could share the table, but Kong Danshim coldly replied that he should wait until she finished eating. However, when she heard that the chairman would pay for the food, she immediately smiled and agreed. While eating, Kong Danshim showed off her skill in reading faces. According to her, the chairman looked sensitive and somewhat narrow-minded, but because of the excellent shape of his nose, it was obvious that he was extremely wealthy and would live his entire life in luxury. Kong Danshim did not stop there. She even requested that the leftover bones be packed for takeout so she could bring them home. Because of her unusual personality, the chairman became even more interested in her. After eating, Kong Danshim brought the bones to the park intending to feed stray dogs, but she could not find any, so she simply threw them away and went home. But when she arrived near the apartment, the little dogs suddenly appeared again, as though they were truly destined to meet. While looking for food for the dog, a neighbor saw her and said that the police were looking for her. It turned out that the staff from her former livestream team had filed a case against Kong Danshim and accused her of assault because one of them had a scratch on his hand. At the police station, the man shamelessly demanded a huge compensation for various supposed expenses. Because Kong Danshim knew nothing about modern laws, she could only stand there in shock. And at that exact moment, Charlie arrived once again to save her. Without hesitation, he presented the video clip from the livestream where Kong Danshim nearly vomited after tasting the product. He used it as proof that there was truly something wrong with the drink they were selling. On top of that, Charlie directly revealed that the director had never paid Kong Danshim for her previous work. He even threatened to sue the broadcasting station if necessary. Upon hearing that, the director immediately panicked and quickly claimed that it was merely a personal matter and did not need to be escalated further. In the end, he had no choice but to withdraw the case against Kong Danshim. After the problem was resolved, Kong Danshim suddenly asked Charlie whether he had gone there because he was worried about her. Even though the question hit him hard, Charlie still pretended to stay calm. To stop himself from doing even more impulsive things because of his feelings, he established a new rule after they signed the contract. According to it, there had to be a clear boundary between their work and personal lives. Afterward, Kong Danshim brought the conversation back to Munzo and asked whether he often visited Charlie. Charlie shook his head and said that their relationship was worse than that of complete strangers. And that was indeed the truth. The man who filed the case against Kong Danshim was merely a pawn being used by Munzo to test Charlie's reaction. When he saw Charlie rush to the police station at midnight for an unknown actress, he only smiled mockingly. To Munzo, Charlie's feelings for Kong Danshim would eventually become his weakness. While they were heading home, Kong Danshim mentioned Munzo once again, making Charlie uneasy. He started suspecting that she might like Munzo, so he warned her not to be deceived by his cousin's kind face. Because of this, memories from the past suddenly resurfaced in Kang Danshim's mind. In ancient times, the king brutally killed animals in the royal garden. To save her pet dog, Kang Danshim had to pretend to be angry and repeatedly throw stones at it just to drive it away and save its life. Back in the present, she immediately handed the stray dog she had picked up to Charlie and asked him to take care of it for the meantime. Unfortunately, Charlie had a severe allergy to dog fur. But because Kang Danshim had entrusted it to him, he had no choice but to take the dog home. After that, he practically bathed repeatedly because his entire body became unbearably itchy. At first, he wanted to give the dog away, but he imagined how loud and chaotic Kang Danshim would become if she found out. So he was forced to endure it instead. To keep Kang Danshim happy while avoiding his allergy, he passed the responsibility of taking care of the dog to Sun Jae-chan. Meanwhile, Kang Danshim had a dinner meeting with Hong Bu-sien. When she saw the food, she initially looked down on it because the servings were tiny and did not seem filling. But after tasting the first bite, it felt as though she had been transported to another world because of how delicious it was. She immediately forgot all dignity and kept eating non-stop. Ever since Charlie bought the company, Hong Bu-sien already knew that Kang Danshim had become his new golden goose. Because of that, his treatment toward her suddenly changed, and he started taking extremely good care of her. He even gave Kang Danshim a supporting role in a famous drama series. While watching this, Yoon Ji-hyo nearly turned red from jealousy, but there was nothing she could do. Meanwhile, Kang Danshim remained completely focused on enjoying the delicious food without caring about her surroundings. But when she returned home and saw the simple dinner there, she suddenly thought about the expensive food she had eaten earlier. That was when she realized that quality was more important than quantity. A little later, Hong Bu-sien sent her a message saying that she needed to watch the first season of the drama before joining the production so she could understand the flow of the story. Because of that, Kang Danshim spent the entire night binge-watching the series. And she was not merely watching it. She carefully studied the relationships between every character and even created a detailed chart to fully understand the entire story. Aside from watching the drama, she was also busy writing a handwritten letter for Charlie as a supposed gift from an artist to her biggest fan. The next day, Kang Danshim officially signed a contract with Charlie's company. From that point on, Hong Bu-sien's former company became only a subsidiary, and Charlie himself became Kang Danshim's direct boss. After the signing, Kang Danshim immediately approached Charlie and personally handed him the letter she had spent a long time preparing. She even firmly instructed him to open it only at night when he was alone. That evening, Charlie excitedly opened the letter. But the moment he looked at it, he froze because it was entirely written in classical Chinese characters, a language he could not understand at all. Because he wanted to understand the contents of the letter, he seriously copied every single character onto his tablet and began searching for meanings in the dictionary. In the end, he successfully managed to read the entire letter. As he read every line, he felt a strange warmth and could not stop himself from smiling. Aside from the letter, the envelope also contained two simple hand-drawn sketches. One showed Kang Danshim playing with the dog, while the other showed Charlie giving a thumbs up in an extremely weird pose. Under the drawing, Kang Danshim had written the message, "For my amazing fan." But because Charlie was so delusional, he misread it and thought it said, "For my man." Because of that, his heartbeat suddenly sped up as if it would burst out of his chest. The next day, Charlie secretly approached Sun Jae-chan to ask about love letters. When Charlie heard from Sun Jae-chan that love letters were a way for someone to express their true feelings, he secretly became flustered and could barely hide his happiness. Meanwhile, the moment Kang Danshim received the signing bonus from the contract, she immediately decided to rent the entire rooftop of the apartment building. She even personally built a beautiful shelter for her beloved dog. While she was busy with that, Hong Bu-sien called to say that he had secured a variety show for her. The program wanted Kang Danshim to share a complicated and painful story about her childhood in order to attract views. But because she was merely someone who had traveled from the past, she did not actually possess any memories of the original Kang Danshim's real life. When she saw the address on an old package, she decided to visit the countryside to search for fragments of truth about the real identity of the body owner she had borrowed. On the other hand, Sun Jae-chan happily informed Charlie that he had posted online to look for the dog's owner and that someone had already claimed it. But what Charlie was truly worried about was how Kang Danshim would react once she learned that the dog was gone. On that same day, Charlie attended the groundbreaking ceremony for their company's new resort project. As he and the chairman walked around looking as grand as celebrities, some relatives could not help but stare at him with envy. Only Munzo remained smiling and appeared kind. After the event, Charlie directly approached Munzo and warned him to stay away from Kang Danshim. But Munzo only smirked and said that Charlie should stop interfering in matters that were none of his concern. He even added another insult by saying that the only good thing about Charlie was the face he inherited from his mother. Because he had been struck at the most sensitive part of his life, Charlie could not stop himself from punching Munzo hard. Meanwhile, Kong Danshim followed the address on the package until she arrived at the house of the real Kong Danshim's grandmother, the place where the original owner of the body had grown up. Even though she could feel the old woman's deep love for her granddaughter, she could not fully accept it because she knew she was not truly the real Kong Danshim. While they talked, she slowly explained the real reason why she had come there. When the grandmother learned that Kong Danshim would soon appear on television, she nearly cried from happiness and even said she would record the show so she could watch it repeatedly. But when Kong Danshim mentioned that her memories of childhood were blurry, the old woman started becoming suspicious because her way of speaking was now different compared to before. When the grandmother asked whether that was the result of the accident she experienced, a group of gangsters suddenly arrived and destroyed the grandmother's noodle shop. At the same time, the chairman was scolding Charlie inside the car because of his hot temper and for hurting Munzo. As they passed by the noodle shop, the chairman even mentioned that Munzo had been tirelessly working to organize the redevelopment project in the area. It turned out that they planned to demolish the entire area to build a resort. But Kong Danshim's grandmother refused to give up the long-time noodle shop because it was the only remaining memory she had with her granddaughter. To force her into agreeing, the gangsters not only threatened her, but also threw the freshly cooked food onto the floor. When Kong Danshim saw that they were even planning to hurt her grandmother, she immediately delivered a powerful kick that sent one of the men crashing down. A moment later, another gangster attempted to stab her from behind, but Charlie arrived at the exact moment and threw his cell phone to knock the knife away. After that, he quickly ran toward Kong Danshim to make sure she was not hurt. But Kong Danshim was so furious that she first knocked down the remaining gangster before calming herself. Seeing that, even Charlie became slightly frightened. In truth, he had only happened to pass by the signboard of Kong Danshim's noodle shop and felt that something bad might happen. So he decided to check on it. The moment Kong Danshim saw Charlie, she happily asked whether he had already read the letter she gave him. She then followed it by asking about the condition of the dog. She also said that she had already found a better place to stay, so she no longer wanted to become a burden. Because of that, Charlie was forced to admit that Sun Jae-chan had already found the dog's real owner. Unfortunately, the chairman overheard their entire conversation. When the old man asked about his relationship with Kong Danshim, Charlie lied and said that he merely pitied her. The word pity felt like cold water poured directly into Kong Danshim's heart. She suddenly realized that perhaps all the kindness Charlie had shown her was merely pity and nothing more. When she returned home, she found her grandmother sitting absent-mindedly. Kong Danshim assumed she was simply sad because of the planned demolition of the noodle shop, so she immediately hugged her and promised that she would never let anyone take that place away. But when she handed over the gift she had brought, the old woman suddenly asked who she really was. Kong Danshim went cold with fear that her secret might have already been discovered. At that exact moment, Munzo arrived to speak with her. He offered her a dangerous deal. If she could make Charlie fall in love with her, Munzo promised that she and her grandmother would live luxurious lives and never have to worry about money ever again. While staring at Munzo's arrogant face, memories of the crown prince from her past life resurfaced in Kong Danshim's mind once again. Even back then, the crown prince had also used her and forced her to be passed on to his younger brother as the prince's woman. Because of the chaotic memories and the repeated pain from both lives, Kong Danshim finally broke down. When she returned to the apartment, she angrily destroyed the dog shelter she had built before collapsing onto the floor and crying loudly. And once again, Charlie arrived to apologize. But despite being hurt, Kong Danshim directly told him to stop looking at her with pity because he was only giving her false hope that he might truly have feelings for her. In the end, Charlie could no longer stop himself. He was someone who always lived with clear logic and strict control over his emotions. Yet Kong Danshim was the only person capable of throwing his mind and feelings into chaos. Upon hearing that, Kong Danshim immediately placed her hand on Charlie's chest to check whether what he was saying was true. But she became disappointed because she felt that his heartbeat still seemed calm, as though he felt no emotion at all. But what she did not know was that simple touch had already completely destroyed the last bit of restraint Charlie still had left.